Hey people, welcome to the Demented Robot Games YouTube channel. My name is Boris, and here I am again in another episode of my board game reviews to show you a game that may potentially be interesting to you for your collection or for your playing group. Now, before I dive into today's review, I just want to say that I need a little introduction actually. I just want to say that this game is a legendary game that we're going to see today, a game that is a true classic in the world of modern board games. So obviously, those of you guys who are more experienced with board games will probably want to navigate away from this video because I'm almost certain you guys have either played this game a lot or you own it, okay? But this video is actually very important, in my opinion, for those of you guys who are relatively new to this hobby and who should definitely know which games are legendary, which games are classics, games that should be a staple of your collection actually, games that you should definitely check out because they have stood the test of time, they have been around for a long time, and they're still going strong. And it's definitely this, all that I've said right now is definitely the case with the game that we're taking a look at today, okay? So just pay attention to that. If you already own this game and if you have played it a lot, just navigate away, go to my channel, watch my other videos because there's a lot of interesting stuff there that you may want to be interested in looking. But the game that we're taking a look at today, a classic as I said, is this game. Pandemic, okay? Released by Z-Man Games, designed by Mr. Matt Leacock. This is a 2 to 4 player cooperative strategic game. For those of you who are not familiar with the concept of cooperative playing, these are games where you don't compete against other players. You are working together as a team. You're trying to win the game. You're playing against the game itself, basically. So these games, cooperative games, have clever mechanisms that will work against you, and you as a group are going to try to beat the game itself. So you either win collectively or you lose collectively, which is a cool thing. You can relax. There isn't any antagonism between the players. It's a cool way to relax, just have a good time with your friends without having to necessarily compete against each other. Some people will actually prefer these cooperative games. I'm going to leave the box because I don't want to be holding it all the time. So, Pandemic, a 2 to 4 player cooperative strategic game, as I told you. So, the story of the game goes like this. In this game, there are 4 deadly diseases threatening to eradicate humankind. They are spreading across the planet, infecting cities, and if you don't do anything about it, they are just going to eradicate humanity. So you and your group of players are going to take on a role of a team of experts, medical experts, doctors, researchers, scientists, who are basically traveling across the world trying to end up finding these 4 cures for these 4 diseases. Okay, so you will be traveling across the map, visiting cities, lowering infection levels in different cities, controlling the situation on the map as much as you can and as best as you can. You will be using your special powers, abilities. You will be doing these actions to buy yourself enough time, essentially, until the moment where you're capable of discovering these 4 cures. If you do, you will collectively win the game. If you fail, and there's more than 3, and there's actually 3 ways to lose this game, then you will simply lose. So you either win or lose collectively. That's a very general concept of the game. In the next section of the video, as always, I'm going to set the game up and show you exactly how it works. So let's do just that. Hey people, okay, we're at the table and this is how Pandemic looks like when it's set up and ready to play. Now, I'm not going to get into details about the actual setup of the game because I have previously made a special video that takes care of this setup and teaches you step by step exactly how to set it up. So if you want to see that, follow the link in the description of the video. This video, though, is going to take care of only how the game plays, okay? So pay attention to that. Okay, without much further ado, let's dive into this, okay? So this is the board, obviously, the main board on which you're going to play, and it represents, as you see, the map of the world. You have your continents here, and you have these circles, these spaces that represent major cities in the world. These are going to be locations that you'll be able to visit over the course of the game, okay? So These cities are connected with these lines. It's obvious. If two cities are connected with a line directly, they are adjacent and you can move directly from one to the other as an action, but you'll see how that works later. Also, certain cities are going to get infected by these cubes. I'm just going to randomly infect cities. I'm not going to pay attention to the actual cards that I'm going to draw from here. So 3 cities should have 3 cubes, then 2 cities should have other cities should have 2 cubes each, and then finally 3 cities should have 1 cube each. So I have just randomly set that up. Okay, so let's imagine that a few cards were drawn from here. According to that, these cities are going to be infected by these cubes. So these cubes represent infection levels of certain cities. A city can have from 0 to 3 maximum cubes on it. These cubes correspond to these diseases. We have 4 diseases here: yellow, red, blue, and black disease. Our final objective is to find cures for these 4 diseases. These 4 diseases have their corresponding cubes in their respective colors, and then we have 4 corresponding colored areas on the map, okay? So that's how this is set up. We here have the draw pile, this is the infection pile. As a player, you will get your role. So you will randomly choose which role you're going to play. This role will be very important because that defines who you are. Some kind of specialist. This here is the researcher. Every specialist has a text on the card, as you can see, and that defines your special ability. Your special ability is really going to influence how you play. So tactically, you will play differently each time you play a different role. The game is very asymmetrical that way. In addition, you will have your starting hand of cards, which can be a various amount of cards depending on the number of players. So that's going to be your starting assets, and then you can start playing the game. Now, everybody's turn actually, is going to consist of 3 phases. First of all, we have the action phase where you will perform actions on the board. Then you have to draw 2 cards from this draw pile here, from this deck of cards. And then finally, you're going to draw a certain number of cards from this infection deck. Each card here is the city. As you draw them, you're going to infect additional cities, okay? So that's the structure of your turn. Now I'm going to explain every phase in more detail. So first, you're going to perform your 4 actions on the board. You have 4 actions to perform, and you can choose in which combination or order you will perform these actions. These actions can be various stuff, and I'm going to quickly explain what everything is. So first, there are several ways to move on the board. The first way to move, most simple and most obvious, is to move from one city to one adjacent city. 2 cities are considered adjacent if they are connected directly with a line. So we all begin the game here in Atlanta, so I can move to Miami as one action, or to Washington, or to Chicago, because those 3 cities are connected with Atlanta. So if I'm, let's say, the purple player here, I will move my pawn, let's say for one action, to Washington. That's one simple movement. For that, I have to spend one of my actions, okay? The other way to move is to play the card here on the table, to play a city card here on the discard pile, and fly yourself directly to that city. So here in my hand, I have 4 city cards. So let's say this is Paris, okay? Or no, let's say Bangkok, because it's further away. Okay, it will show you better what I want to say. This is a Bangkok card. You have it in your hand. As an action, you can play that card here on the discard pile and fly yourself directly to that city. So I will fly myself directly here to Bangkok. That's one additional way to move. Further, you can play the city card of the city that you're currently in to be able to fly yourself anywhere on the board. So if I'm already here in Bangkok and I play the Bangkok card on the table, I can fly wherever I choose. Let's say I need to fly to Madrid, I fly to Madrid. My choice, okay? That's how the third way of moving works. And then finally, I can move between cities that have these research stations, these white houses. We have our first research station in Atlanta, and the only one, but over the course of the game we'll be able to build more. We can move freely between cities that have these research stations by spending one action for that. By the way, all these actions that I'm mentioning can be repeated and played several times in a row if you want to. So you can move several times, you can fly several times, and all that jazz, okay? So those are 4 ways in which you can move, but you can do other stuff. Most importantly, you can heal these cubes. So if you're in a city that has at least 1 city cube on it, as an action, you can remove 1 cube and return it to the reserve, effectively lowering the disease level in that particular city. Again, you can repeat this action several times. So if I have 3 actions at my disposal, I can get into the city with 3 cubes on it and spend my 3 actions to remove all those cubes from that city. So these actions can be repeated. Healing is very important because that's how you buy yourself enough time until you can try to win the game. I will speak about that later. Okay, so that's one action. Next action you can do is build a research station. So you will play the city card of the city where you're in. So let's say that I'm here in Miami. I play a Miami card here on the table. I discard it, it's out of the game, and then I can build a research station here in Miami. It may not be the good example because these cities are too close. Obviously, you will want to build a research station somewhere further so that you can spread them strategically on the map. Why is this important? First of all, because of moving. I told you that you can move for 1 action between cities with research stations, but at the same time, you can discover a cure only in a city with a research station on it. That's why these houses are important. So as an action, you can build one of these by playing the card of the city that you're currently in. The next action you can do is exchange knowledge. If 2 players are ever in the same city together, they have an option of exchanging a card. The card being exchanged must be the city that you're currently in. So if the purple player and white player here are in Khartoum, they can exchange this card when they're in that city. So as an action, you can either give the other player a Khartoum card or take away from them Khartoum card, okay? And then finally, final action and arguably, potentially the most important action is discovering a cure, which is actually your victory condition. When you discover 4 cures to these 4 diseases, you immediately win the game. So obviously discovering these cures is very important. How do you discover a cure? First of all, you need to be in a city with a research station on it with one of these little houses. Second of all, you need to discard 5 cards of the same color here on the discard pile, and then you discover a cure of that particular color. So if I am here in Khartoum and I have a research station here, I can, let's say, discard 5 red cards, and then I discover the cure for the red disease. I put this token here on the board to keep track of that. From that moment on, this disease is cured. Cubes belonging to this disease will still appear on the map, but curing this disease now becomes radically easier, because after discovering the cure for the disease, from that moment on, by spending 1 single action to remove a cube, I remove all cubes of that color. So instead of spending 1 action per cube, I'm now spending 1 action to remove all cubes. So let's say I've discovered a red cube, and let's say that I'm here in Bangkok, which has 3 red cubes. For 1 action, since we have a cure here, I can remove all 3 cubes from Bangkok instead of only 1. That's why curing the disease is important, and of course, because that's your victory condition. When you have 4 of these tokens on the board, you immediately win the game. So those are your actions. During the first phase, which is the action phase, you perform 4 of those actions in any order and or combination that you see fit, and that's the end of your action phase. Then we have the draw phase, where you draw 2 cards from this deck, okay? So you draw 2 cards, and then you can keep them if you can, or discard down to 7 if you exceed 7 cards, because that's your maximum hand limit. Most of these cards are city cards. You've already seen them. These are city cards. A city has a name here on the top, then it has its position on the board, and it has its color. This is a blue city, Paris, okay? So you collect them for obvious reasons, because you use them for actions and you use them to discover these cures, which is your victory condition. But some of these cards are these cards here. They look like this. These are event cards, okay? You also keep these, and you can play one of these cards at any point during your turn and resolve the action which is written on the text of that card. I'm not getting into what these cards exactly are, but they are very useful. There's only a couple of them in this deck. And then finally, we have these green, nasty epidemic cards. When you draw these, something nasty happens, but I'm going to explain that to you guys a little bit later, in a minute or 2, okay? You draw these 2 cards. If you can keep them, you keep them as a part of your hand. If you have more than 7 cards, you must discard down to 7, or play an event card for its effect and essentially discarding it from the game and getting yourself down to 7 cards again. And then you go into the third and final phase of your turn, which is infecting new cities. This is then the infection phase. You draw the number of cards, which corresponds to the number below the current position of this token here. So we begin with 2, but later on we can get to 3 and even 4. This tells you how the position of this token tells you how many cards you're supposed to draw and resolve from here. So in this particular case, at the beginning of the game, we will draw 2, one by one. All of these cards represent cities. When you draw a card, you place it here on the discard pile, and then you place 1 cube of that color to that city. So if in this phase, if I draw this card, this is Essen, it's a blue city, I will take 1 blue cube from the reserve and put it in Essen. Essen is now infected, you see. And then I have to draw 1 more in this phase. This is San Francisco, a blue city. 1 additional blue cube is going to be put on San Francisco right here. And that's the infection phase for you. As the game goes on, this will move forward. So over the course of the game, you may be forced to draw 3 cards and then even 4 if you get to this point here. Okay? Now we have 2 more things to explain. First of all, outbreaks. Okay? A city can have a maximum of 3 cubes of the same color on it. If you ever draw a city card that would cause you to put the 4th cube on the city, instead of doing that, you do not put the 4th cube. Instead, you infect all cities that are adjacent to that city with 1 additional cube of that color. So let's say that I drew New York from this deck. New York already has 3 cubes on it. Instead of putting my 4th cube, I will put 1 cube in London, 1 cube in Madrid, 1 cube in Washington, and 1 cube in Montreal. Because all of these cities are adjacent to New York. Now all these cities, this is how the disease is spread throughout the map. This is called an outbreak. When that happens, you will keep track of that by moving this token 1 space forward for every outbreak. But there can be a chain reaction. So if one of the adjacent cities already has 3 cubes in the moment of the spreading of the disease, that city has another outbreak and it spreads further. So you can find yourself in a very nasty position very soon because this game can create these nasty chain reactions. And then finally, we have to explain these epidemic cards. So if during the draw phase you draw one of these, you will then be able to be forced to resolve it in 3 phases. First of all, you will move this token 1 space forward, potentially increasing the number of cards that you will draw during the next infection phase. Second of all, you will draw the bottom deck card from this deck and then infect that city with 3 cubes of that color. In this case, that's Tokyo. Where is it? Where is it? Let me see. Damn it. Tokyo, where are you, Tokyo? Here it is. And then finally, you will shuffle the discard pile, this pile here, shuffle it, and put it on top of this deck without further shuffling the entire deck. So all these cities that were previously infected can now get infected again. This is how this works. And that's basically how you play. You play your action phase, you draw your cards, discard down to 7 if you have to, you infect your cities, you pay attention to these epidemic cards, you pay attention to the outbreaks. The game goes like this in the clockwise direction as long as you either win collectively or lose collectively, because as you know, this is a cooperative game. You will win if you discover all 4 cures for 4 diseases. The moment you have 4 tokens on the board like this, you immediately win. You can lose in 3 different ways though. First of all, you can lose by reaching the last track, part of the track that keeps track of outbreaks. So if you ever move this coin to the last position, skull and bones here, you see, you will immediately lose. The second way to lose is to run out of these cubes. So if you're ever required to infect a city with a certain cube, and you don't have any cubes of that color in reserve, you immediately lose. And then finally, if you ever have to draw cards from here and there isn't enough for you to draw, again, you immediately lose the game. So you can lose in 3 different ways. And that's basically it. You play until you either win or lose, and this is Pandemic for you boys and girls. Now, in the next section of the video, I'm going to tell you what I think about this game. So that's Pandemic for you boys and girls. You've seen how it works, you've seen all the mechanisms. I haven't shown you guys every single detail, So this wasn't literally a how to play tutorial video, but you have more than a decent idea about how the game works. You should only check out a couple of small details in the rulebook and you will almost be ready to play, okay? So you've seen most rules and most systems in this game with a couple of small omissions because I just didn't want to make the video too long. So, what do I think about Pandemic? I guess it was clear right off the bat that I really liked the game. I told you that I thought this game was legendary, that this game was a classic, and it really is. And it's a classic for a reason, a very good reason, because it's really, really good, okay? This is a game that may not be as flamboyant, as bombastic, as epic as some other games out there. But this game is what people like to call elegant. And it truly is elegant. It may be a corny phrase in the world of modern board games, but this game truly is elegant, so I'm using the expression anyway. Everything in this game just works. Every single rule, every single system, everything makes sense, it's very logical, and it just works. This game does not suffer from having superfluous things inside of it. Nothing is superfluous, everything just works, everything's there for a reason. The game works like a well-oiled machine, really, and that's probably the main reason why it is so popular, why it is still going strong after who knows how many years since it was released. I haven't done my research very well. I don't know when it was released. But it's going strong and it's a good game for a reason. Now, I will mention a couple of things that are extremely good about this game, but I don't want to make this last part of the video too long, so I'm just going to fly over these things that I love. First of all, the theme just works. Now, this is a strategic game, obviously, so for most of these games, you can really slap any theme onto the game. It will still work the same. But in the case of this game, this theme really works. It could be something else. In fact, there are reskins of this game, like Pandemic Cthulhu, for example, where the theme is completely different. But for me, the theme with these diseases just works because everybody can identify with being a doctor who's trying to heal these diseases. Everybody can identify with being a hero who's trying to save the entire world. So the theme just works. Duration 45 plus minutes, that's cool. Depending on the number of players, this will vary, of course, but it's not a long game. It's not too short either. I think the duration is ideal, actually. So it works in that department as well. Number of players, I've played this game with all player counts and it works perfectly with all of those. Maybe the game is slightly more interesting with 3 or 4 players than it is with 2, but it still works with 2 players, and it's still a fun, interesting game. So the game works with all player counts as well. But the most important thing here, obviously, is the playing experience itself. The game is wonderfully tense, okay? It builds tension quickly. You know, these cities are getting infected. The situation is getting more desperate turn by turn. You're trying to mitigate all these things. You're trying to control the situation on the board. But regardless of what you do and regardless of how smart you are as a group of players, the situation is still slowly, gradually going to get worse and worse. So your time is ticking, and that rises the tension level in this game. And if you guys have been following my channel, you know how much I love games that build up tension. I love adrenaline, I love tension. This is one of those games. It's very strategic, very thinky, so you will have to use your brains collectively. It's very cooperative, it's extremely cooperative. There are cooperative games out there that simply ask you not to step on each other's toes and just not to get in each other's way. In this game, though, that's not the case. The cooperation level in this game has to be way up there. Because if you're not communicating perfectly, and if you're not communicating in a timely, clever kind of way, you're simply not going to win. And let me tell you, this game is difficult to win. Okay? So, the game is really thinky, really strategic. You will really feel like a team. You will really feel like you depend on the other guys. This game does not allow you to be a hero. If anybody is selfish, if anybody tries to be a hero, they are just going to ruin things for everybody else. So you have to be really selfless, sacrifice yourself for the team, and just work together, work like a unit. A fabulous, fabulous game. I'm not going to keep ranting about it. This game has stood the test of time. You should definitely try it out. I'm almost certain no one can hate this game. Maybe you will be okay with it. Maybe you will love it. Maybe you'll be ecstatic about it. But you certainly won't hate it. This is a good, good game. Okay? So I absolutely recommend this game. 2 thumbs up for this game from me. And that's it, boys and girls. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching. As always, thank you for sharing, liking, subscribing. Subscribe, please, and tell your friends about this channel. Until the next time, I bid you farewell. Goodbye.